spending too much money on avocado toast, or for expecting to get by without working hard. But Carl Moore thinks we should learn from the generation, which encompasses people in around the age of 20 to 35. He wrote an article about his experience working with millennials titled Never Apologize, Never Explain Dumb Ideas with Millennials. It was published in Forbes magazine on Tuesday online. And he joins me, Carl Moore, in studio this morning. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
You kind of look like a millennial this morning. I saw you you were taking selfies in the hallway, selfies, you got your tablet. Are you a millennial deep down inside?
Well, they reverse mentor me. So when I was young, mentoring is about 99% one way, you just salute and say yes, ma'am.
Right.
Where today, millennials, about 25% of the time, and I have 5 of them work for me, undergraduates.
Right.
And they teach me things. And they gently and nicely point out where I could be a little bit better, or social media is an obvious one, where they just get it.
Heed. You're definitely taking heed.
Well, you try to, partly because the world is so different than it was 5 or 10 years ago, that if you're an older person and you just, base your own experience on what happened to you, it's increasingly outdated. Mm-hmm. We've got to listen to young people in order to be with today's world and have the right kind of business strategies.
Mm-hmm. Your article, the title of your article, is a reference to an idea from 19th century Oxford scholar Benjamin Jowett. And he was a man known for his sort of reform ideas around administration, public service. So he is stated as the person who coined the term, never apologize, never explain. The rumor has it that he also said, get it over with and let them howl. But in your article, you're arguing the opposite. You're saying, especially in terms of leadership, it's a bad idea not to apologize and not to explain, especially when it comes to millennials.
Oh, absolutely. And this is an expression I've heard as a boomer, I've heard growing up, and often mainly from men, to be honest. And it's kind of like an arrogant power thing. Mm. And I think it just absolutely dated today with millennials, that you should explain almost everything. Why that is because they want to know what's going on, but they also want to add their 2 cents worth. They want to add value and say, hey, that's an interesting point, but had you thought of this? And it's a bit irritating at first, but now that I've got used to it, you go, actually, 2 heads are better than one, is an old expression.
Right.
And there's some truth to it, where they actually improve my ideas. So I would argue, if you're a senior business person, what you want to do is listen to young people, because they're in that turbulent environment that you're trying to change your organization, your business to be more like. So it's
right.
Uber's, the Uberization of every industry is what we hear about. And it's ideas of millennials are boundary spanners. They have a foot in the turbulent world and a foot in your organization. As a senior person, you often have a number of filters between you and reality. So to be a good capitalist, if you merely want to make money, you got to listen to millennials more in order to change your strategies to be in alignment with a more turbulent environment.
Are they learning this? Does this have to do with the way they were parented? That they're the generation where their parents answered all of their questions all of the time, as opposed to maybe my generation. I'm just a few years older than millennials, and my generation was sometimes it'll be a need to know basis.
Well, when I was at IBM, one of the principles of management was you kept knowledge close to your chest because it gave you power.
Right.
Where today in the world of Google, that's a you can't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. I think what it is partly is that they were explained a lot. They also increasingly, they talk about their sisters or brothers in high school with iPads. You no longer ask your mom or dad, why is the sky blue? You look it up on Google.
Right.
And you probably get a more sound explanation, to be honest. But it's sort of thing where what it is the world of millennials is really quite different than the world I grew up with. We call it modern versus postmodern as the worldview. Mm. But for example, millennials love feedback, partly because social media gives them a lot of feedback.
Right.
Video games give them feedback.
Right.
And in the schools, they get more and more feedback. So when they show up at McGill, they want feedback, and that's right.
But does that come across as sometimes that feedback idea sometimes is interpreted as a sign of weakness, like that you need to be coddled?
Well, I think some people can take it that way. Maybe that's not entirely unfair, but I would argue that actually, mainly they want to do better. Mainly they want to improve, and you go, I can't be against that. I'm actually for that when I think about it. So it's mainly a good thing. Now, it can be like anything overdone. You can apologize too much.
Right.
But I see more of the danger, particularly for men, is they don't apologize enough. When you think about all the sexual harassment, most apologies struck you as they're not apologies.
Right.
They're
No,
excuses. They're not really going, I screwed up, I did wrong,
I'm sorry.
I'm totally wrong.
Right.
They don't say that typically.
Yeah. Say I'm wrong as opposed to I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's something where you go, I did wrong and I must apologize. That's what you want to hear. And occasionally one or two did it, but most just sounded more like weaselly kind of things as opposed to, I'm really sorry.
We just got a text in saying millennials are going to eat you. I'm not sure what that means, but
Cannibalism.
cannibalism among the millennials. I guess.
I don't think so.
Maybe this person is a little bit afraid of millennials.
Well, one thing is, I'm not sure what the point they're making, but just to kind of riff off it, is saying our workforce is at least half millennial now.
Right.
So it's kind of get over it. It's too late. And they're increasingly in middle management. They're starting to run things. And the boomers are like myself are starting to think about retirement, so they're becoming more important.
And that's where I think that's where the clash of the generations exists. But this is not new. In your generation, when you started into the workforce, was there not a challenge between, the people who were in the higher up positions who were probably more old school and you representing?
What do you mean, my generation? Our generation.
Our generation, you and I.
Well, we're stretching it there. But no, absolutely. In every generation, it goes back to Plato complaining about the next generation, which is like 3,000 years ago.
Exactly.
So it's human nature to complain about the next generation and their failings.
Yeah.
And undoubtedly, the millennials will complain about their kids.
For sure.
In time. And I look forward to that. But it's something where I think what I'm arguing in the book I just finished is that the world that they have is substantially different than that of the people that run the world today, boomers and Generation X, is that they're going to change. Having a mortgage and kids focuses the mind.
And the word is that millennials are not looking to have a mortgage at all, actually.
Well, I notice among millennials I've taught, like I play hockey, the guy who's 38, that I taught him in the NBA 10 years ago, so it's kind of scary. But when you look more of them, even with kids, what they're doing is getting a condo downtown.
Right.
Not moving out to the suburbs where you have his and her marching BMWs and a pool in their back. Partly because that's climate change unfriendly.
So
it's maybe wrong. It's also that it's going to be hard to afford, so that you go, and why commute? I remember mom and dad commuting for 2 hours a day. Are you nuts?
Yeah.
And if we can walk to work, that's spectacular. So it's something where my wife, our family uses Kamanoto. We don't have a car, died about 5 years ago. But it's something where that's increasingly very popular among millennials to say, let's not have a car. Let's use Uber. Let's use Kamanoto. Let's get a place downtown, even with small kids.
It sounds like you could be a millennial of an older generation. You're kind of acting that way.
Well, I spend maybe too much time with them, but I have 5 millennials, 20-year-olds working for me, and I travel with them. We're going to Kuala Lumpur and Singapore for 14 days in March. So I spend a lot of time with them, unusually for someone my age. But I think they're spectacular. Tom Brokaw, the famous American journalist, talked about their grandparents as America's greatest generation. This generation has the potential to be America's next greatest generation. And we won't know for 30 years because you got to play out your life.
Right.
But I see some seeds of greatness there.
What would those be?
Well, I think what they're doing is that they have an incredibly changing world. Climate change, you see fighting racism, you see inequality, you see some huge issues. When I look back to the 70s and 80s, it was a pretty good life.
Yeah.
Now, we were screwing up the climate. By and large, we didn't realize it, I hope. But there's something where when I look at the challenges of their world, AI taking away their jobs, stuff like that, there's a lot of uncertainty in their world, but they're handling it reasonably well. And so I think very highly of them. And I spend time with them, and that gives me kind of a privileged sense of them. And I come away going, they're great with some faults. But that's true of every generation. But I really think, given the challenges they face and how well they may adapt to it, and if we don't, we really have a world that really screwed up, I think really highly of them thus far.
Is there a weak spot for millennials in the workforce? What do they have to learn?
Well, there's some things which I think are fair criticisms, that they want to be promoted too quickly. And they want to be CEO in 5 years. You go, well, no.
Well, is that as a result of the feedback training that we've been doing with them, a sense of entitlement?
I think it's a matter of maybe entitlement, maybe everyone being taught they were special. Where in the real world, that only half the people can be in the top half of the class. And I have to have a certain grade average at McGill, and so I turned my grades in last week, and there was rightly some squawking about how low it was. But you go, literally, the BCom office will not put the grades in the system if I don't hit a certain average. Now, I went down and argued for a slightly higher average, which they gave to me, but it's something where not everyone's an A.
Yeah.
And
So
that's the truth. Now, partly at McGill, we have everyone who has been since kindergarten the number 1 or 2 in their class.
Right.
They've never seen a B before. They theoretically know they exist. They've never met one. And in that context, but I go, that's the world that they're really smart young people.
Right. And they're a very small percentage.
And so they want to be promoted more rapidly than realistically. They'd like to make a lot of money. But those are things that I wanted back in my day as well.
Right.
Maybe I was slightly less wound up about it.
Or less vocal about it, yeah.
That's probably it. Less vocal.
Less vocal about it.
Yeah, that's probably a good point.
So millennials could learn that you do have to. It's not realistic to expect that you would just jump up, to CEO after 2 years.
Yeah,
because.
it's just something. You have 50,000 people at SNC level, or 45,000. Like, it's a huge company. I think it's actually 60 something. But you're not going to be Neil Bruce at age 25 because Neil took 30 years to learn to be Neil Bruce, and he was, had a 1,000 of people that also wanted the job.
Well, we have some texters who are suggesting some returns to some old school things that in the workforce. So we have Laura in Montreal who says, I think there is one area we should return to. Hold on a sec. Let me just get back to her text there. She says we should return to the use of last names in the workplace. Respect would be upheld better. Mrs., Mr. Familiarity breeds contempt. So she wants everyone to address each other as Mr. Moore, Miss Indungo. Do you think millennials can do that?
My students have no problem calling me Carl.
Yeah.
I'm no longer bothered by it because I'm old enough that I'm not worried about it. I'm in charge, they're not, and there's not going to be a palace coup. Like, it just, On the other hand, if I was 27, new PhD, I'd probably wear a tie as a man and a suit to get some authority, particularly where MBAs who are about the same age. That's probably a fair point.
We had a young man say that earlier this week about wanting to get authority and using a suit to do that.
But I think what it is a decline of hierarchy. When I was a kid, I'd go to a doctor, be a man with a white coat on, a stethoscope, and behind a desk you could land an aircraft on. He was God, and we were here.
Right.
Today, when I go to my doctor, I sit in a chair beside her. She doesn't have a uniform on, no stethoscope. And I say, Doc, I've Googled what's wrong, and I have 3 theories.
Yeah.
Hierarchy is much less than it used to be. I think we largely need to get over that and accept that if I'm in charge, it's because I bring something there that other people would respect and appreciate. And also, who's in charge is more apt to change around the table depending on the task at hand. When I talk with our trip, we're going to Kuala Lumpur about social media, I listen to the millennials because they know more than I do. Therefore, who's in charge is going to be the millennial in that context. But it'll shift back to me where I'm always the one in charge, but I give authority to other people. And I say to you, a 21-year-old woman, hey, Danielle, what are we doing this morning? And because she has the knowledge.
And in giving that authority, in fact, what it sounds like, it's all about trust, creating trust, right?
Absolutely. That's so really important among millennials. But when millennials want, the rest of us want shortly thereafter.
Right.
When you talk about flexible work hours, not to rub it in, I know you have to be here at 4 some silly hour. It's something where everybody wants that when they hear about it. And I wish I had parental leaves when our kids were small.
Yeah.
I wish someone had given that back in the day.
I have to say, I do admire the gusto of many of the millennials that I work with, even here at CBC, where they are willing to push back on things that maybe the rest of us aren't thinking about because we've been programmed to sort of like wait your turn and you're not in the position to address those questions to the higher ups. But what's your last takeaway? What will the millennials, how will they shape the workforce going forward?
Well, their careers are going to be mapped to be multiple careers in multiple organizations, very different than the one I had at IBM for years and at McGill now. They're also going to be challenging us, and largely, 98% of the time, that's fine. A couple percent of the time, they should calm down and apologize and relax. And trust us. But 98% of the time, we need to learn from them, and we need to be reverse mentored 25, 30% of the time. If you're not, I think you're being a jerk.
Oh, you're being a jerk.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be a jerk. Carl Moore, thank you so much for joining us in studio this early morning, and Happy New Year to you. I hope safe travels to Kuala Lumpur.
It'll be wonderful. It'll be warm.
Yeah, it'll be warm.
The mind boggles.
Yeah, warmer than here. Thanks so much. Carl Moore is an associate professor at Des Hotels